This film exists on a threshold for me. If one professes to be a film devotee and is not taken by this experience, I question their priorities. I'm not authoritarian on one's preferences, although where did Herzog possibly get the medium wrong here? I'm aware of the many positive qualities to Aguirre, The Wrath of God. It is very precious to me, and it was the commencement of my own voyage with Herzog's films. I consider him a heroic figure and a positive influence, as well as one of my favourite directors to this day. Though some call into question the ethical calamities associated with the later, similar, almost its successor, 1982's Fitzcarraldo, I wonder if they are to be pointed toward this film also. I happen to think that, whilst Fitzcarraldo is a film which, in the manner in which it was composed, would not be made today, should not be made today, and ought not to be made again in a million years, although as a piece of the past it is a work, I, being born over 10 years after the film was released, perhaps selfishly choose to admire for its unignorable artistic magnitude. It wouldn't be the most evil 20th century film which I do, and certainly not the most evil German film. I have read one account of a contemporary observer, a commenter on one of my videos, who admits to having been appalled at the environmentally catastrophic Fitzcarraldo production, and I don't doubt there were many more at the time. Whilst it is strangely difficult to be sympathetic to the role-playing iconoclasts on Letterboxd, these days we ought to distinguish between those who like films and filmmaking from those who like curated lists of films, manicured by users specifically for posturing presentation. These are separate worlds of appreciation, to be fair. In India, in all cases, the Fitzcarraldo discourse inevitably will shine a magnifying glass on Aguirre as well, and having recently viewed the film, from what we can observe on camera, some animal cruelty is monstrously unfortunate, but realistically all too tragically common in film productions at one time, and Herzog would be joining an ocean of directors who had been cruel to horses then and now. All the same, though it contributed to the film's power, of course, a substitute for the cruelty of the Aguirre production would have been a fatal half measure, obviously. I don't feel any joy in admitting that, but there's lots of things about the world we wish we didn't have to admit. So on these grounds, is it fair to dismiss Aguirre? Yes, just like Fitzcarraldo, it is, I think, one's prerogative. My prerogative is films and filmmaking. Perhaps I lack a certain affect, perhaps I am too obsessed with the possibilities of the medium, having toyed with it myself, although even if this were true, I'd prefer to be honest about it. Now, on film and filmmaking grounds, where do we critique Herzog's work on Aguirre? One doesn't. How would they be able? On ethical grounds, we may find some, I can believe. What about on cultural grounds? What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is the film's perceived politics according to New York art critics like Pauline and Armand, who dismiss filmmaking as an art form in favour of what it is communicating to the culture as they see it. I'm a pacifist in the culture war. All I want to do is lay in the sun. And what of the internet critics on IMDb who critique a film as a spoiled, arrogant, picky viewer? Was the film worth one's time, with no care as to what the artist intended? To them this is irrelevant to how the film ought to be assessed. How a film ought to be assessed is as an offered euphoria, for director irrelevant, were you entertained as a 21st century entitled brat, not interested in how it was created, only interested in describing the effects like it were one of their prescribed antidepressants, which they smugly don't want to work anyway. Again, let's be totally fair, that is a different world of appreciation. Sometimes, to realise one's vision of an historical narrative on film, one simply has to recreate the circumstances. Griffith's Babylon towered over subsequent film history, and in the year 1971, Ken Russell unleashed the Devils, although the next year Herzog dwarfed this even still with The Wrath of God. This Wrath of God would eventually inspire Apocalypse Now. Anyone who likes films, I mean, and who would humbly say, yeah, I like sitting down with a movie, unless they hold a certain disposition of upset toward the film's intent as artistic rather than as pure gratifying entertainment, which is not in and of itself incorrect, I suppose, really, but otherwise, I think, especially if one is open-minded and easy without particular prearranged expectations, they will very much appreciate that they viewed this film in their lifetime. And even as a sort of gratifying entertainment, I'm certain one can find something to enjoy and appreciate about Aguirre, The Wrath of God. To me, this is one of the most miraculous film experiences of all time, one of the most marvellous accomplishments in our species' artistic canon. It bowls me over, and I suspect that it bowls over so many people to this day and will continue to do so for the rest of time. We're not going to try and make this film again, nor ought we, if not just on ethical grounds, just out of a certain respect, right? If you're so inclined, do share your own thoughts on this. I consider one of Herzog's 5 or 3 best films. Yeah, I'll say that. An irreplaceable experience, absolutely.